Currently, I am living the life of a character inside a romance novel. It sounds grand, doesn't it? But I am not the male lead and certainly not the heroine. Those main characters with their world-shaking, passionate romance are all far away in the capital. As the daughter of a countryside noble, none of that concerns me. My only worry is whether I'll catch any rabbits today. Or at least, that was what I used to think. Of course, there is a reason why I was drawn into this world. Emily, my sweet little sister, whom I've cherished since birth, is fated to marry the male lead and die in childbirth. In the end, her entire life is reduced to a single line in the book, the deceased first wife. That is why I will absolutely never allow Cedric Hayward to marry my sister. I will obstruct him by any means necessary. I will not let him set foot in my house. To prevent this tragic union, she is determined to ensure Cedric and Emily never cross paths. But little did she know things were about to take an entirely unexpected turn. Cedric suddenly drops to his knee, asking softly, "May I have Lady Dillion's hand in marriage?" Witnessing his proposal, Dillion stands completely frozen. This is absolutely not the outcome she wanted. How did trying to stop the male lead end up with her marrying him instead? No, she cannot let this happen. For in this story, there is already a true heroine whom Cedric is destined to be with. This time, she is truly doomed. At the very first glance, her heart began to race. The stranger asks, "Is this the way to Viscount Langton's estate?" Staring at him, she instantly recognizes his identity. He is none other than Cedric Rawdon Hayworth. Seeing her stare, Cedric wonders, "Why are you looking at me like that?" But her blood runs cold. This is the very man who will bring about her beloved sister's demise. Cedric is here by his grandfather's decree. I cannot stand by and watch my heir remain unmarried as he approaches 30. Go and get married at once. Viscount Langton has a beautiful daughter named Haley. You must marry her. Cedric sighs, exhausted. Grandfather, are you still in your right mind? I am already worn out, yet you suddenly force this upon me. The old man snaps, "How dare you speak to your grandfather in such a tone?" To Cedric, the Langtons hold no power. Their estate lies in ruins, and they are financially ruined. Yet their bloodline is exceptionally noble, the one thing Cedric lacks. He smiles at his grandfather. "You know, grandmother told me you were once close friends with the late Viscount Langton." At this, the old man flinches, breaking into a cold sweat. He stammers, "What exactly did your grandmother tell you?" Cedric calmly recounts. She said the late Viscountess Lila Langton was a legendary beauty in her youth. She also spoke of a foolish young man who was so lovesick for Lady Lila that he forgot to eat or drink. But Lady Lila was already betrothed to her true love, an honorable gentleman who happened to be that fool's best friend. So the fool never had the chance to confess his feelings. On their wedding day, he could only hide in a corner and weep his heart out. She even mentioned that caring for this clumsy, useless man all her life was an exhausting burden. And her exact words were, "Never again. I would rather die alone." Hearing this, Cedric's grandfather clutches his head in frustration. Confound it. Lounging on the sofa, Cedric teases with a smirk. "Grandfather, do you know who that cowardly fool she spoke of is?" Pushed to his limit, the old man slams his hand on the table. "Fine. That clumsy fool was me. So what of it?" After that conversation, Cedric rides his horse through the countryside forest. He reflects on the past as he rides. Even after marriage, the Langtons and his grandfather remained in contact. It seems they made a pact to marry their firstborn children to one another. But since both families had sons, the original plan fell through, and so they now wish to fulfill that long-overdue promise through their grandchildren. Swamped with work, Cedric finds it a major headache. The old man's whims will be the death of me one day. Who cares about romance anyway? More importantly, he realizes he has wandered deep into the woods. Looking around, he sighs. Finding my way in this countryside is quite a challenge. It's nothing but endless wilderness. Just then, he catches a rustling sound nearby. Glancing over, Cedric spots a mud-splattered figure passing by. He calls out, "Hey there, young lad." But the person completely ignores him. Cedric clarifies, "I am speaking to you, the one in the brown hat with rolled-up cuffs." The heroine, thoroughly disguised in boyish attire, slowly turns around. Cedric asks, "Is this the road to the Langton estate?" Noticing her unblinking stare, he frowns. "Why do you look at me so?" She replies coolly, "You called for a boy. How was I to know you meant me?" Cedric apologizes. "Now may I ask the way to the Langtons?" Her brow twitches as she inquires, "Might I ask your business with the Langtons?" Cedric replies coldly, "Is there any reason I should tell you?" Unfazed, she cheerfully points in the opposite direction. "I only mean to say you are heading the wrong way. To see Viscount Langton, you must go that way. Follow that path through the forest, and you will reach it once you exit the woods, sir." Cedric is skeptical. That doesn't seem quite right. But seeing her absolute certainty, he nods. Thank you. Tipping the brim of her hat with a knowing smile, she bids him farewell. Yet, as he travels down the eerie, gloomy path, the Langton estate remains nowhere in sight. Fortunately, he encounters a local woman. She warns him the Langton estate is back that way. If you keep going down this path, you will only find the graveyard. Cedric gasps. The graveyard? He grits his teeth, realizing the mischievous brat had deliberately misled him. After countless detours, Cedric finally arrives at the manor. In the elegant parlor, the Viscount greets him warmly. The last time we met must have been at your uncle's wedding. The little boy of yesterday has grown into quite a handsome young man. How has your grandfather been lately? Cedric offers a polite smile. He is doing very well, sir. He is in excellent health, though internally he grumbles, healthy enough to banish his grandson to the middle of nowhere over a half-century-old first love. The Viscount sets down his teacup with a soft clink. I see. I am glad to hear that. Now, shall we discuss our business? What brings you all the way here? Cedric senses that the older man already knows the purpose of his visit. He gets straight to the point. To be frank, I have come to meet your daughter, Lady Haley. Hearing the name, Viscount Langton looks taken aback. Pardon? Cedric hesitates. Lady Haley. Did I get her name wrong? No, you didn't get it wrong, the Viscount replies. He pauses thoughtfully. I do indeed have a child named Haley. Cedric recalls his grandfather's words. He had seen the child once as a tiny 6-year-old. Back then, she possessed beautiful blonde hair and remarkably bright green eyes. Cedric recalls how his grandfather insisted that the Langton daughter was named Haley. Yet looking at the youth standing before him, it is abundantly clear that Haley is a young man. He realizes his grandfather's advancing years must have caused the mix-up. Viscount Langton turns to his son. You may excuse yourself, Haley. Haley bows politely and withdraws. Right after, Cedric inquires, but do you have any daughters? The Viscount smiles. Yes, I have 2 daughters. My eldest daughter, Dillion, is 23, and Emily, the youngest, has just turned 17. There is a bit of an age gap between them. Cedric calculates that the marriageable daughter his grandfather meant must be Dillion Langton. He offers a polite compliment. Both young ladies must be beautiful, inheriting the family looks. I look forward to meeting them. When Cedric brings up marriage, the Viscount hesitates. Emily is still quite young and delicate. Though a 10-year age gap isn't uncommon, so... Cedric interrupts, puzzled. But didn't you say you have another daughter named Dillion? At Dillion's name, the Viscount breaks into a sweat, stammering, Dillion? Well, I'm not so sure. She's a bit peculiar. Seeing his reaction, Cedric senses that the Viscount is embarrassed by his eldest daughter. He muses that parental favoritism is not rare, but a true noble would never show it so openly. He begins to feel disappointed, finding the Langtons quite different from his expectations. Just as his sigh deepens, the door is flung open with a loud bang, startling everyone in the parlor. A lady with flowing hair and elegant attire steps inside. It is Dillion. Seeing a guest, she acts surprised and offers a sheepish smile. Oh dear, please forgive me. I had no idea we had company. Yet in the blink of an eye, her gaze turns razor sharp, casting a threatening glare at Cedric. The instantaneous shift in her demeanor leaves Cedric utterly stunned. Dillion utters a flat, chilling farewell. That parting word instantly triggers a memory in Cedric's mind. This woman, could she be the insolent lad he encountered in the woods? The air between them crackles with a sudden, intense hostility. Cedric wonders how on earth he could have mistaken her for a boy earlier. Viscount Langton asks his daughter what has happened. Dillion quickly apologizes, explaining she was simply overjoyed at catching some rabbits and barged in, unaware of their esteemed guest. Cedric offers a polite smile. Rabbits? They are rather lovely creatures, aren't they? I am quite fond of them myself. But Dillion instantly dampens his mood by adding flatly, they are for dinner. Cedric is taken aback. Pardon? Dillion goes on to describe trapping 3 fat rabbits in the western woods, and though their fur is ruined, she is glad to have fresh meat for their guest. As Viscount Langton repeatedly calls her name to stop her, Cedric quickly sees through her act. He realizes this uncouth, delicate-lacking display is entirely deliberate. First, she purposely misdirected him, and now she's using classic reverse psychology to make him reject her. Inside, Dillion is trembling with rage, her fists clenched tight. I want nothing more than to kick this bastard out and ensure he never steps foot here again. He can act so calm because he is oblivious, but I know the truth. My precious sister is doomed to marry him and die as a mere extra. Examining herself in the mirror and straightening her dress, Dillion's mind races with thoughts of Cedric Rawdon Hayworth. In the original novel, Cedric appears at age 30, with his wife already deceased for a year. Counting backward, Cedric must be 28 right now. This means the entire tragedy from marriage and pregnancy to childbirth and death unfolds within a single fleeting year. Cedric's late wife was described as a lady with golden hair and emerald eyes, traits exceptionally rare in these lands. And the only one who possessed such beauty was none other than Emily, the little sister whom Dillion cherished above all else. If she did nothing, her sister would marry Cedric, bear his child, and ultimately lose her life on the birthing bed. Dinner at the Langton estate proved to be absolutely delicious, yet the atmosphere around the table was as tense as a battlefield. Cedric carefully savored each spoonful of the delicious soup, but his appetite was quickly stifled by Dillion's fiery, resentful glare. The young lady of the Langton family stared unblinkingly, deliberately fixing their esteemed guest with a look of intense hostility. Dillion's rising anger had actually taken root just a few moments earlier. When Lord Langton dismissed her to speak with Cedric in private, Dillion's bright smile instantly morphed into a menacing scowl. "I'll have the chef wring the rabbits' necks and drain them dry. I do hope you look forward to dinner." Recalling this, Cedric thought wearily to himself that perhaps he should postpone the engagement, as he could no longer bear such hostile scrutiny. Seeking to break the suffocating silence, he turned to converse with the lovely youngest daughter, Lady Emily. But instantly, Dillion interjected with a radiant smile. "Do you like this dish, my lord? I only wish to know if you are satisfied with the rabbit stew." Cedric could only force a polite laugh in response. "Of course, haha." She nonchalantly continued. "The traps are remarkably well made lately, you know? Once a weak, innocent prey is caught, there is virtually no hope of escape." Cedric immediately caught the dark, hidden meaning behind her words. Meeting her sharp gaze and enchanting yet eerie smile, Cedric wondered in bewilderment. What on earth is she trying to do? If she doesn't harbor affection for me, what is the true motive behind this provocation? Her heart fluttered with excitement. "Oh my, Dillion, have you completely fallen for Cedric?" To Emily, the glances exchanged between Dillion and Cedric seemed incredibly passionate, like a deep romance silently unfolding before her eyes. Yet the reality was quite the opposite. Those two actually detested each other to the core. How did it go? Rewinding to a few hours earlier in their private chamber, Emily had been bursting with eagerness when Dillion returned. "Oh, Dillion, what did he say to you?" "Did he tell me everything?" In stark contrast to Emily's enthusiasm, Dillion remained somberly silent. Then, with a furrowed brow, she said, "He came to propose marriage." Hearing this, Emily could not hide her excitement. Oh my goodness. She was convinced their noble guest had come to propose to Dillion, already imagining her sister as the future Marchioness. However, shattering her sister's excitement, Dillion threw cold water on her dreams. "The one the Marquis seeks is none other than you, Emily." Before her bewildered little sister, Dillion flared up, listing a barrage of reasons to oppose the union, from the vast age gap to his notoriously scandalous past. As her older sister, there was absolutely no way she could permit this marriage. Placing her hands on her sister's shoulders, Dillion warned her solemnly, "Just remember, you can never change a person's true nature." But when Emily asked who had taught her that, Dillion casually replied, "Mother taught me." The words left Emily stunned, for their mother had passed away when Dillion was only 6 years old. Emily asked in confusion, "But why me? Why couldn't it be you? He might actually want to marry you instead of me." Emily thought to herself because Dillion is so lovely, confident, and incredibly kind. There is no way he wouldn't fall for her. Dillion merely offered a soft smile. "That will never happen, Emily." Dillion's gaze grew deeply serious. "Regardless, even if he turns out to be the most wonderful man in the world, he is not for you." Swayed by the weight of her words, Emily nodded obediently. "I understand, Dillion." Regaining her usual gentle demeanor, Dillion said, "Now I shall rest a bit before dinner. Let us go down together shortly." Emily happily agreed, but this very moment sparked a flurry of new deductions in her mind. She recalled Dillion's peculiar, almost unusual concern regarding Cedric, telling her to stay behind while dressing up to meet him herself, only to vehemently insist he was wrong for her. Emily's eyes lit up as if she had unearthed a grand secret. "Yes, of course, I knew it. My intuition was entirely correct." "Oh, Dillion, try as you might to hide it, I see right through you." Emily, a devout lover of romance novels, was now utterly lost in her own fantasy world. "I knew it all along. You have feelings for the Marquis, don't you?" Had Dillion known, she surely would have screamed, "Are you kidding me? How many times must I say that is not the case?" Rather than being resolved, the misunderstandings only seemed to escalate further than ever. Meanwhile, Cedric observed the blatant hostility and wariness written all over the noble lady's face. He wondered why a young lady would harbor such baseless resentment toward him, and he resolved not to go easy on her or play nice. With a sly grin, Cedric decided to expose her for deliberately giving him the wrong directions to the Langton estate. Dylan instantly paled, desperately searching for a way to save face as she lamely excused herself by claiming to have a terrible sense of direction. Hearing this, Haley asked in surprise, "A terrible sense of direction? But before he could finish his sentence, he was instantly silenced by a menacing aura of pure malice radiating from his sister. Then, quickly changing her expression, Dylan begged Cedric not to hold such a trivial matter against her. Cedric flashed an enigmatic smile, determined to play this game to the very end with Dylan. Cedric suggested, "I hope someone might accompany me on a post-dinner stroll, but if you are unfamiliar with the area, there is no point in asking, is there?" Dylan froze mid-bite, her eyes widening in sheer panic. Cedric continued, "So perhaps Lady Emily could act as my guide." At that, Dylan blurted out in a panic, "No, I can be your guide. Please, I insist." Observing this, Emily's romance radar instantly flared. She quickly claimed her body was so frail that she would faint after a mere 30 steps, making her sister far more suitable. Dylan laughed along, though deep down she wanted nothing more than to strangle Cedric on the spot. The evening twilight draped the estate gardens in a poetic, serene beauty. Dylan and Cedric strolled together amidst the vibrant, blooming flowers. Cedric tried to ease the stifling silence by praising the garden's beauty, expressing a desire to live in such a tranquil setting. Yet his enthusiasm was met only with brief, indifferent yes responses from Dylan. When Cedric suddenly asked, "Do you hate me?" Dylan nonchalantly replied, "Yes," instantly freezing the air between them. Realizing what she had just said, Dylan scrambled to explain. That was a slip of the tongue. Those are not my true feelings. I do not dislike you at all, truly. I sincerely wish for you to find happiness. That is the truth. But I do not wish for Emily to be the one sharing that happiness with you." Cedric pondered Dylan's attitude. She seemed to have anticipated his intentions long before he ever set foot here. Why would she say that? He wondered, deeply perplexed by her intense animosity toward him. Dylan frowned. Emily is far too young. Although Cedric argued that 17 was not too young to wed, in Dylan's eyes, her sister was still a mere child, far too young for marriage. He continued to explain patiently. "The house of the Marquise is not some dangerous forest to be feared, nor do we harbor any terrifying monster that might devour her." Yet upon hearing those words, Dylan's face contorted as she screamed inwardly, "But you are that very monster." Her overly transparent reaction made Cedric feel as though he could read her every thought. She fought to compose herself, desperately trying to smooth things over. "I only meant that a sophisticated high society man like yourself might find her lacking by your standards." High society, is it? Though we are merely provincial folk ignorant of the world, we do, at the very least, read the newspapers. At this, Cedric let out a chuckle. "I was wondering what you were hinting at. Do you truly believe every scandalous rumor they print about me in the papers? So you are saying they are all lies?" Cedric looked away, slightly guiltily, thinking, well, not entirely, but 99% of what they write is sheer fabrication. Just then, Dylan's voice made him freeze. "Katerina Rosum. Does that name ring a bell?" Cedric patiently tried to explain the situation. "We parted on amicable terms." "That certainly doesn't seem to be the case. I read about the two of you in the papers just 2 days ago. Perhaps they only witnessed the moment we went our separate ways. It is entirely over between us." Dylan looked at him hesitantly, her eyes filled with deep skepticism. "I do not believe you." At those words, his eyes sharpened. "Just what kind of man do you take me for? I am telling you the absolute truth, yet you insist on treating my words as lies, all because of baseless tabloid gossip? Have you ever stopped to consider how I might feel being constantly judged based on mere rumors?" Seeing her startled expression, Cedric paused. He mentally cursed himself for letting his anger get the better of him. At that moment, Dylan spoke up. "I apologize. I have been terribly rude. Please accept my sincerest apologies. To me, you have always seemed like a mere character in a book." "In a book?" Realizing her slip of the tongue, she quickly covered. "I mean, since I have only read of you in newspapers, you felt almost like a fictional character. Because of that, I developed a very biased view of you." She bowed her head, gently placing a hand over her heart with utmost sincerity. "But that does not excuse my disrespectful words just now. Please accept my most heartfelt apology. We are strangers, and we are not friends. I admit I deliberately kept my distance due to my own irrational prejudices." Yet, deep down, she knew the real reason ran much deeper than that. It all traced back to a classic romance novel she had read in her previous life. It was a typical Prince and Cinderella love story with highly predictable tropes. The novel's male lead was Cedric Hayworth, a noble marquis, and the female lead was Apolline, a middle-class girl. Every event in the book existed solely to build up their fairy tale romance. That included both her, Dillion, and her sweet little sister, Emily. When Cedric first met the heroine, Apolline, he was in the darkest chapter of his life. He had drowned himself in alcohol, gambling, and self-destructive habits. All of his despair stemmed from the agony of losing both his wife and child. His late wife had endured a grueling childbirth, drawing her last breath after delivering a stillborn baby. The devastating loss drove Cedric into absolute despair, drowning him in vices, until he met Apolline. Her presence was a brilliant light piercing through the darkest night of his existence. Yet, as both carried wounds from their past, their relationship was constantly plagued by misunderstandings. Cedric believed Apolline was only after his wealth, while Apolline thought he merely lusted after her body. To make matters worse, a cruel irony was revealed. Apolline looked identical to Cedric's deceased wife. In her past life, she had absolutely adored reading this novel. Despite the cliché tropes, the profound emotional connection and the captivating chemistry between the leads had thoroughly won her over. She had sincerely wished for their happiness, never once intending to get in the way of their love story. She only wanted to ensure the story unfolded exactly as written, except for one single detail. If only, in that book, the Marquis's first wife had not been described as a girl with golden hair and emerald eyes. Sun-kissed golden hair and jade-green eyes, the exact appearance of the wife who died during childbirth in the novel. And that was also her beloved sister, Emily Langton, the daughter of an honorable viscount, who would marry the Marquis to secure his lineage, only to meet a tragic end. It all began a few years ago when Dillion stumbled upon a newspaper article about the romantic scandals of Marquess Cedric. That name and title acted as a spark, awakening memories of the romance novel from her past life. Yet at the time, she had no idea that her sister Emily was destined to be his tragic, short-lived wife. In the original novel, the name Emily Langton was never mentioned, referred to only by cold titles like the late wife or the former Marchioness. But to Dillion, who had lived in this world for nearly 20 years, this was her real flesh-and-blood family whom she loved most. Their mother had passed away shortly after giving birth to Emily. The premature infant was so tiny and fragile that it seemed she might draw her last breath at any given second. At just 6 years old, Dillion swore to herself that she would protect this fragile little life at all costs. She stayed awake by the cradle night after night, carefully feeding her and watching over her every breath. Even now, though Emily was perfectly healthy, Dillion still kept the habit of slipping into her room just to make sure she was still breathing. So realizing the tragic fate that awaited Emily in the novel, she could not simply stand by and watch. She had to stop that cruel future from happening, even if it meant throwing herself into the fray. But in that novel, what kind of character was Dillion herself? Her name was never even mentioned. She was only referred to as Lady Samuelson, a wretched villainess so detested by Marquess Cedric that he refused to utter her real name. In the original story, she was a greedy woman who tried to seduce her sister's husband, stopping at nothing even during Emily's funeral. The book described her with utter disgust, highlighting her cunning gaze and base desires. Back in reality, seeing the man before her accept her apology, Dillion smiled softly. "Thank you, and I also apologize for my rudeness earlier." Beholding her sudden, radiant smile, Cedric found himself dazed. He had never imagined her smile could be so breathtakingly beautiful. But in the next instant, Dillion withdrew her smile and said firmly, "However, I still oppose your marriage to Emily." The following day, a small ball was held at the Langton estate to welcome the guests. Amidst the bustling party, Cedric felt his head about to burst as Emily's name constantly echoed around him. Right after their garden chat yesterday, Dillion had relentlessly pursued him to execute her plan of driving him away. "My Lord Marquis, please do not propose to Emily right now. Please just go back home. That is quite impossible." "Is that so? Then I will stop you from proposing to Emily at all costs." She followed him everywhere, pleading constantly, driving Cedric to the brink of madness. He knew all too well that storming off now would make him look utterly untrustworthy. Besides, his grandfather would never allow him to return without completing his task. Yet seeing Dillion pursue him so relentlessly, he was even less inclined to give up. Suddenly, Cedric spotted Dillion and Emily laughing and talking together. A mischievous idea flashed in the Marquis's mind. What if he approached them now and invited Emily for a dance, he wondered. By etiquette, the host could not refuse the first invitation to dance. Let us see how she would extricate herself from this situation. With a triumphant smile, Cedric strode toward the two sisters. Noticing his approach, a panicked Dillion grabbed her sister's hand, intending to flee. But Cedric was a step ahead, blocking their path with an enigmatic smile. "Good evening, Lady Dillion. Lady Emily." Seeing Dillion's face contort in panic and anger, Cedric felt immensely gratified. It was time to pay her back with interest for all the trouble she had caused. Bowing politely, he addressed the younger sister. Lady Emily, may I have the honor of? Before he could finish, Dylan forcefully interrupted. Unbelievable. How could you possibly know? I really desperately want to dance. But ironically, not a single soul has asked me. Can you believe that? Oh, if only some kind gentleman would offer me a dance. It would be wonderful. She held out her dance card, eyes welling with tears, gazing at him with longing. Cedric never expected her to be so shameless and theatrical. He chuckled softly, playing along with her game. Well then, would you care to dance with me? Without a moment's hesitation, Dylan grabbed his hand and cheered gleefully. With pleasure, you are truly far too kind. In this superficial atmosphere, the only one truly delighted was Emily, the romance-obsessed sister. The dance had barely begun for a minute, yet the noble Marquis already felt his feet would not survive the night. Several high-heel stomps landed squarely on his feet, accompanied by Dylan's insincere apologies. Gritting his teeth, Cedric recalled Emily's earlier wish of good luck. So her sister wished him luck to pray for his feet? Dylan interrogated him as they danced. There are so many fashionable ladies in the capital. Why must it be Emily? Actually, there is a reason. I do not care about others, but I need the Langton bloodline. His words prioritizing blood immediately angered Dylan. She stomped harder, eyes blazing. What an insult to Emily! You view her merely as a tool for personal gain? How dare you? Cedric winced but remained calm. My apologies, but that is a bit of an exaggeration. Marriage between two noble families is perfectly normal. The Langton family possessed a long history and pure bloodline, but in return, their finances had dwindled. Possessing a noble spirit, they never considered raising the land rent for their people, even during poor harvests. Pride and honor were deeply ingrained in their bones. Indeed, her family had declined. All that remained was their noble name. She knew this well, but she did not like it one bit. Stomping on his foot again, Dylan pleaded while dancing. I am sorry, but Emily is different. She is still a dreamer, loves romance novels, and longs for a passionate romantic love. And you do not? Ignoring him, she said, If you want pure blood, there are other nobles. None as pure and honorable as the Langtons. Though humiliating to admit, our finances are depleted. I really advise against marrying into our family. Cedric smiled confidently. That is not an issue. My Southwark family is exceedingly wealthy. I believe I can win her over with my own charm. Dylan looked at him with disdain. What is with this ridiculous confidence? I am sorry, but I will continue to oppose this marriage. There are so many noble ladies out there. Why can you not let her go? Then, if Emily is out of the question, how about you? At this, Dylan angrily stomped on his feet repeatedly. I would be absolutely thrilled if you would give up on this. Sorry for stepping on you. Lady Dillion, I won't disappear just because you stomp on me dozens of times. It was only 7 times, and it was an accident. But I do wish you'd disappear. Cedric's face grew serious. Are you really doing this out of concern for your sister? Dylan paused. What do you mean? You are past the ideal marriage age. Are you sure you're not jealous she is marrying first? Before he finished, a sharp heel slammed onto Cedric's foot, distorting his face in agony. Dylan leaned close, whispering with a sly grin. That last one was intentional. With that, she pushed him away and walked off proudly, leaving the Marquis stunned. Late at night, Dylan sat alone by the fountain under the moonlight. Soft footsteps approached quietly. Cedric appeared, breaking the silence. Dylan spoke first. You do not need to apologize. Let's consider us even after what happened in the ballroom. But you were the one who stomped on my feet. Dylan clenched her fists in annoyance, then sighed softly. Look, I know I seem eccentric to you, but I only want what is best for my sister. You are not a bad person. On the contrary, you are quite exceptional. I simply do not want you to be Emily's husband. Cedric asked. Then what if it were you? Dylan stared blankly. If I proposed to you instead of Emily, would you accept? A bewildered Dylan asked. What? But you wouldn't do that. One never knows. No way. Why would you propose to me with Emily right here? Seeing her demean herself, Cedric frowned in disapproval. Why not? Well, first of all, I have been extremely rude to you. Perhaps I prefer strong and fierce women. Are you mocking me? I am not. Things are different now. You are decisive, resolute, and persistent. And that intrigues me. Cedric smiled. I am starting to find your sharp tongue rather charming. Under this beautiful moon, I suddenly want to ask you something. Goosebumps covered Dylan as she pushed him away. You are creeping me out. Please stop. Cedric gave a mesmerizing smile. Lady Langton, will you mar? Before he could finish, the bushes rustled violently. Emily burst from the thicket, tears streaming down her face as she wailed, I knew it! Both Dylan and Cedric jumped, staring wide-eyed at the hysterical younger sister. Before Dylan could explain, Emily rejoiced, her eyes shining as if she had struck gold. I knew it! The Marquise is in love with you, Sister Dillion. The ecstatic girl spun around and dashed like an arrow toward the ballroom. Brother Haley! Brother Haley! The Marquise has proposed to Sister Dillion. Dillion chased after her in panic. Wait, Emily! Listen to me! Usually exhausted after a few steps, Emily now sprinted like the wind, leaving Dillion completely breathless behind her. Emily's shout landed like a bombshell in the ballroom. Viscount Robert Langton, the girl's father, paled. What did you just say? Emily eagerly recounted the story to her father and brother, embellishing it with romantic details. The Marquise proposed to Sister Dillion in the garden. Dillion, the stubborn lady who captivates me. I wish to propose to you under this shimmering moonlight. That is what he said. The crowd gasped in astonishment. Dillion dragged her exhausted self into the room, her face pale as she tried to explain. No, that is completely wrong. He did not say that at all. What on earth are you making up, Emily? You usually faint after a few steps, so how did you run so fast today? No, it was not like that. Every eye in the ballroom immediately turned to Dillion, placing immense pressure on her. Please let me explain, everyone. You have all misunderstood. Emily chimed in. I am not lying. I heard it with my own ears. Dillion forced a laugh. She did hear us, but he was only joking. That at the word joking, her father's face darkened terrifyingly. What? He proposed to you as a joke? The chilling aura made Dillion shudder, realizing she had just made a grave mistake. To an honorable family like the Langtons, a distinguished man must never treat a proposal as a mere jest. Dillion stammered. No, that is not it. Then what is this proposal about? Dillion wept silently in her heart. How could she confess that it all started with her trying to stop him from marrying Emily? Seeing his daughter stammer, Robert Langton turned to the door, his voice cold. Then perhaps you will give me an explanation, Marquise. Cedric walked in leisurely. Despite the tension, his handsome face bore a knowing smile directed at Dillion, giving her goosebumps. Tell me, did you seduce Dillion only to mock her with a false proposal? Dillion quickly interjected. Father, of course not. Stay quiet, Dillion. Seeing it was hopeless, Dillion shut her mouth. Their father turned to Cedric with a sharp gaze. Is what Emily said true? Cedric answered calmly. She might have misunderstood a few minor details, but essentially, what she heard was correct. However, I have not yet officially proposed to Lady Dillion. Hearing this, Dillion screamed internally. Please, just apologize and end this right now. Cedric continued. I sincerely apologize, Lord Viscount. Dillion rejoiced inwardly. Yes, good job. Blushing, Cedric added. This should not have been kept between Dillion and me. I ought to have spoken in your presence. The smile on Dillion's face instantly froze. Cedric approached her to the utter astonishment of everyone present. He slowly knelt on one knee, drawing a velvet box that opened to reveal a sparkling engagement ring. Lady Dillion, may I have the honor of asking for your hand in marriage? The entire ballroom erupted into excited cheers. Emily wept tears of joy. Sister Dillion, what are you doing? Say yes. While everyone was swept up in the romance, a shadow of pure panic enveloped Dillion. She stood frozen, her face darkening in absolute despair. She knew she had just plunged herself into a monumentally colossal mess. To the Langtons, Miles was not just a name. It had become a curse word used whenever they found themselves in the absolute worst of luck. It all began years ago. Miles Whitewood, the eldest son of Baron Whitewood and a childhood friend of the Langtons, was once Dillion's fiancé. Yet, on New Year's Eve, he did something incredibly foolish. In front of the crowd, he loudly declared he was breaking off the engagement with Dillion for the most shameless reason. I never truly loved you. I only ever saw you as a friend. So I do not wish to marry you because the one I love is not you, but Emily. Not stopping there, he played the tragic lover, claiming he had no intention of pursuing Emily, but merely wanted to be honest with his heart because lying tore him apart. Dillion was enraged not just by the public rejection, but because her sister Emily was only 15 at the time. Following that ridiculous scandal, he fled the town, and Miles officially became the classic curse word of the Langtons. Returning to the present, Dillion realized she had just thrown herself into the worst Miles mess in history. The Marquise's Southwark family had helped the Langtons immensely. If she flatly refused now, tomorrow's headlines would scream, Viscount Langton's daughter publicly humiliates and rejects the proposal of Marquis Southwark. But she truly did not want to marry Cedric. She did not want to take Emily's place, only to die of childbirth complications. Furthermore, if she were to fall in love with him and the heroine Apeline appeared, what would become of her? Dillion was so overwhelmed she wanted to collapse. Just then, the warm voice of an old man spoke up. I know you are anxious, Lady Dillion, but please do not keep us waiting. Please give him an answer. Dillion spun around in shock. The elderly man's appearance stunned both her and Cedric. It was none other than Duke Graham Hayworth, Cedric's grandfather. Dylan immediately noticed something unusual. In the original novel, this Duke was supposed to have passed away long before Emily's death. His passing, followed by the deaths of Cedric's wife and child, had driven Cedric into despair. But in this world, he was still alive and well. That was why Cedric was currently only a Marquis, having not yet inherited the title of Duke. The Duke smiled warmly. I came as soon as I received your letter. What a beautiful sight. Oh, it seems I have interrupted a momentous occasion. No matter, Cedric. Give this young lady another chance to answer you. Cedric looked at his grandfather, then turned to Dylan, continuing his proposal. He is quite right. Dylan, will you marry me? Moved to tears, the Duke wept twice. The boy proposed not once, but twice. How marvelous. Faced with this situation, Dylan knew she had absolutely no way out. To refuse would mean the utter ruin of her family's honor. Suppressing a helpless sigh, she whispered hesitantly, Yes, I do. Cheers and applause echoed throughout the ballroom. Cedric smiled as he slid his grandmother's engagement ring onto her finger. The ring was slightly loose, slipping gently on her finger. Dylan forced a smile, tears welling in her eyes. Onlookers were deeply moved, assuming her tears were born of pure joy. Yet Cedric watched her strange expression with doubt, wondering if the thought of marriage alone could bring her to tears. In truth, a fire of determination had ignited in Dylan's mind once more. She absolutely refused to admit defeat. There had to be a way to keep Emily alive, find true love, and still guide Cedric back to Abilene. A sudden spark of inspiration struck Dylan, bringing a sly smile to her lips. That was it. She simply had to make Cedric call off the engagement himself before the wedding. Observing her face shift from despair to cunning, Cedric knew the stubborn girl had no intention of yielding. After that tumultuous night, Cedric relocated to a nearby villa belonging to the Duke's family. He was no longer just an honored guest, but Dylan's official fiancé. He sent the loose engagement ring to a jeweler to be properly resized. Meanwhile, at the Langton estate, Emily was beside herself with excitement, clinging to Dylan and rambling about romance. When night fell and the sisters shared a bed, Dylan tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She clutched her head, trying to devise a way to force Cedric into breaking the engagement, as she could not call it off herself. The moment a sigh escaped her lips, Emily sat up, bursting with curiosity. Was that the sigh of someone in love? Dylan grumbled, pushing her sister back onto the mattress. Good grief, please just go to sleep. Your eyes light up the moment romance is mentioned. The next morning, Dylan woke with a clear resolve. She decided that instead of playing complex games, it would be best to simply ask him to call off the engagement. She waved off her maid's offer to style her hair. No need, thank you. But, my lady, do you not wish the Marquise to find you pleasing? Speechless, she thought. Absolutely not. And I have no reason to try. Confidently, Dylan stepped out into the hallway and knocked on Cedric's door. As the door opened, she offered a polite smile. Good morning, my lord. Good morning. Would you care to accompany me for a walk? With pleasure. The two walked side by side along the shaded garden path. The lingering silence made Dylan feel slightly self-conscious. Clearing her throat, she took the initiative to speak. My lord, your proposal was truly quite a surprise. Is that so? I believed we shared enough of a connection for it not to be entirely unexpected. Dylan frowned inwardly. A connection? What connection could there possibly be between them? Their unforgettable first meeting, the stroll in the garden, and then their dance at the ball. Realizing this, Dylan thought awkwardly. Well, I suppose that is true. In a romance novel, all of that would be considered flirting, but she asked aloud, but we both know those brief moments are hardly enough to warrant a proposal. Cedric looked perfectly serious. I found the progression quite natural and reasonable. You mean to say those trivial interactions were enough for a marriage proposal? Nothing regarding you is trivial to me. Even before arriving here, I had decided to marry one of Viscount Langton's daughters. A proposal was always my intention, and the opportunity arose at the perfect moment. Besides, I did fulfill your wish, did I not? My wish? Cedric suddenly leaned close to her face. Your wish that I would not propose to Lady Emily. I intentionally asked if you would be all right if it were you I proposed to. And if I remember correctly, you never said I could not. Dylan hesitated, her expression darkening. I hope you did not propose simply because you knew I could not refuse. Such a thought never crossed my mind. Dylan cried out. Did you truly think I could refuse with a duke standing right there? To do so would have been an insult to the entire ducal house. How could I expose my family to such a risk? Cedric replied thoughtfully. I felt the same way. I had no desire to compromise your honor with lies or excuses. I know how precious honor is to the Langton family. Dylan gritted her teeth, quickening her pace to hide her fluster. I hardly care about that. My former fiancé publicly broke off our engagement right in the middle of a crowded ballroom.
Cedric stopped in surprise. That actually happened to you.
It did. First a broken engagement, and now a public proposal. But I would rather have endured the shame then than be rumored now as a woman jilted twice. Sensing his hesitation, Dillion sighed. My lord, it is not as though you proposed out of affection for me. Seeing Cedric's surprise, Dillion hurried ahead. You have no feelings for me, and neither do I for you. Many say companionship alone is enough to sustain a marriage. But I believe love is absolute in marriage. Walking behind her, Cedric gently replied, I agree. Dillion exhaled. Then you understand. Before she could finish, she stopped in her tracks. Cedric looked deep into her eyes. I share the very same view. His sudden admission seemed to freeze the surrounding air. He leaned down to look at her. Yes, I believe a husband and wife should share some affection. A marriage devoid of feeling is not worth maintaining. But there is no such feeling between us. With time, feelings can grow between us. Dillion screamed inwardly. No, how could they possibly grow? She was terrified that in the future, he would grow to detest her. I find you fascinating, and it is entirely possible that my curiosity will blossom into romance. Dillion rolled her eyes at him. She was all too familiar with this male lead cliché. Initially intrigued by a peculiar girl, they soon find that familiarity turns intrigue into annoyance. Deciding to strike a psychological blow, she began to lecture him on her theory of love. The love I speak of is not merely affection built over the years. It must be a love of destiny, a passion so fierce that two souls recognize each other as soulmates from the very first glance. I believe everyone has a destined path, a single true love, and that is the person you ought to marry. Her silent plea was clear. Go marry the heroine and leave me be. Cedric listened, chuckling softly. That is quite an idealistic and romantic wish. She gritted her teeth. We simply cherish different values. In her mind, Dillion envisioned the novel's climax, where Cedric held Apeline, making vows of life and death. Indeed, he was the very man who would utter those words to the heroine. Cedric pondered in silence before speaking. Is that an ideal you are unwilling to abandon? For now, yes, I am unwilling. Seeing her absolute resolve, Cedric relented. Then perhaps we should do as you wish. Dillion rejoiced inwardly. He really is a reasonable man. But before her joy could fully bloom, Cedric added another condition. However, we shall only do so if you can personally convince my grandfather. Your grandfather? The Duke? Indeed. Uniting our two families through marriage has long been his wish. He mentioned that he and your grandmother were dear friends for many years. His final wish in this life is to see me wed her granddaughter before he passes. A cold shiver ran down Dillion's spine. In the novel, Duke Graham Hayworth would indeed pass away in the near future from heart disease. She asked hesitantly, is the Duke's health failing? Actually, he is perfectly healthy. He simply enjoys being dramatic. Even so, he is truly eager to see me wed soon. Dillion let out a breath of relief. Cedric reassured her gently. Dillion, you have no reason to feel guilty. You have done nothing wrong. I believe it would be better for you to convince him yourself rather than me. Furthermore, if we want others to believe the cancellation was our choice, we must have my grandfather's support. Dillion clenched her fists, her eyes burning with determination. Indeed, her life was what mattered most. She would personally go and convince the Duke. Meanwhile, at the Duke's villa, Duke Graham Hayworth was enjoying his afternoon tea when the butler brought him a letter. The old man opened and read the letter. The news that the engagement ring was being resized filled him with delight, his eyes shining like a child's. The pressure I put on the Archbishop has finally paid off. Just you wait, Cedric. Your wedding will be so grand and flawless that people will speak of it for years to come. Inside the carriage, rolling toward the Duke's villa, Dillion continuously steeled her resolve. She reminded herself that the Duke was still alive and well, meaning this world had already diverged from the novel. She had to remain strong and convince him to call off this marriage. Upon hearing of Dillion's arrival, Duke Graham Hayworth stood up in sheer joy. He eagerly went to welcome her, his heart racing with plans to discuss the wedding this very day. Seeing Dillion in a green dress, the old man felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering Lila, her grandmother, and his late friend. Lady Dillion, now that you are to be my granddaughter-in-law, may I call you Dillion? Dillion smiled awkwardly, a sudden pang of guilt gnawing at her heart. She respectfully presented him with a box of dried camellia tea. The honor is mine, my lord. This is dried camellia tea, which purifies the blood and is excellent for the heart. I heard it is highly effective in preventing heart conditions. Deeply touched, the Duke accepted the gift. Seeing her knowledge of herbs, he was reminded once more of his old friend, Lila. Yet Dylan humbly explained that she studied herbs not out of interest, but to care for her sister, who had been frail since childhood. At the slightest cough, I would grind almonds to brew medicine for her. Dylan's kindness and devotion touched the Duke's heart.
He felt a sudden wave of shame for having neglected her in the past, simply because she bore no physical resemblance to Lila.
Yet, this very tenderness was the truest likeness to his beloved departed friend. The old man smiled warmly, his voice tender. I am truly glad to see Cedric marry before I close my eyes forever. Dylan, please make Cedric a happy man.
Those sincere words struck Dylan's heart like a sudden blow.
Her intention to call off the engagement died in her throat. Seeing the hopeful gaze of the elderly man, Dylan could not bear to disappoint him. With heartfelt sincerity, she spoke. I too hope he will live a happy life. He deserves to find his own happiness. I promise to do my utmost to make that a reality. Moved to tears, the Duke kept expressing his gratitude for having such a wonderful granddaughter-in-law before he passed. Hearing him speak of death so often, Dylan frowned gently in concern. Please do not speak of such somber things, Your Grace. The Marquis told me that you often skip your medical checkups. Your personal physician is deeply worried. Health is what matters most. We all wish for you to live a long life. Confronted by his future granddaughter-in-law's sharp yet tender care, the Duke conceded with a nod. Haha, you have seen right through me, Dylan. Very well, I promise to listen to you. Meanwhile, outside, Cedric sat by the window, staring thoughtfully into the vast courtyard. He sighed softly, wondering if that stubborn girl would actually succeed. The moment Dylan stepped out of the room, Cedric inquired curiously. Well, how did it go? Dylan let out a weary sigh. Fine. Let us do it. Let us get married. Cedric flashed a triumphant smile. He had anticipated this, knowing his grandfather was notoriously stubborn. But the next thing Dylan said left him completely bewildered. Your grandfather is a very good man. What did you say? I finally understand why you did not want to disappoint him, Marquise. Cedric stared at her in a daze. He had expected her to protest fiercely or complain, yet here she was praising his grandfather. An intense curiosity flared within him about what had transpired inside that room. Dylan spoke again. The Duke wishes for you to come inside as well. Together, they entered the room. Upon seeing his grandson, the Duke held out a special document, an emergency marriage license. Once signed and submitted today, the marriage will be legally binding immediately. Cedric sighed helplessly. Grandfather, when did you arrange this? I sent the request the very day you left. I want this wedding to happen as soon as possible. The Duke began to ramble on about a grand spring wedding at the Imperial Palace lasting 2 months. Just then, Dylan gently set her teacup down and spoke calmly. I want a simple wedding. Silence instantly fell over the room. Dylan explained that having never debuted, appearing before hundreds of guests at her wedding would overwhelm her. She only wished for a small, intimate ceremony with family. The Duke hesitated, trying to persuade his future granddaughter-in-law. But this is the wedding of the future Duke. Do you not want to receive blessings from as many people as possible? Dylan appealed to the pride and traditions of the Langton family. Your Grace, for generations, my family has lived modestly and simply. My father is a very proud man. He would see your family paying for a lavish wedding as charity, and that would deeply hurt his pride. Seeing the Duke's defeated look, Dylan offered a bright smile. I wish to wed at the chapel where my grandparents married. Besides, do you not want the wedding to happen as soon as possible? A small ceremony takes much less time to prepare. Moreover, after the ceremony, we can visit my grandmother's grave together. Dylan stepped closer, looking at the former Duke with shining eyes. I even plan to alter my grandmother's old wedding dress to wear on our big day. I believe you have seen it before. I truly want you to see that dress once again. At the mention of his late friend, the former Duke's heart completely melted. The old man's eyes welled with tears as he nodded repeatedly in deep emotion. Watching his fiancée's masterclass in psychological persuasion from the side, Cedric smirked, thoroughly impressed. In this game, Dylan had taken absolute control. Though Dylan won the battle over the wedding scale, the Duke insisted it happen as soon as possible. Both families began rushing their preparations, scheduling the wedding in just 2 weeks. As they strolled back to the estate, Cedric smiled at Dylan, praising her cleverness. You truly have a way with my grandfather. You had the Duke obeying you like a tamed horse. Dylan replied nonchalantly, rather than forcing myself to do what I dislike, I find ways to avoid it. But if caught in an inescapable situation, I can only do my best to overcome it. Cedric secretly admired her mature mindset, realizing Dylan was the perfect partner. Suddenly, Dylan grew serious. My lord, there is one thing I must make clear. I want you to know that I will never fall in love with you. I believe in destined love. You are not my soulmate, nor am I yours. Because I already know how this story ends. Therefore, I will absolutely never love you. Her firm declaration left Cedric stunned. He wondered what could possibly make her so resolute. Recalling her former fiancé, Cedric probed, "Are you saying this because of your ex-fiancé? Do you still believe he is your destined love?" Dylan was startled but immediately realized this was the perfect cover. "Oh yes, that is exactly it. How perceptive of you. He is the only love of my life, and no one can ever replace him. That is why I cannot be your lifelong partner." He asked gently, "Do you not think time might change your mind? And what if it never does? So I propose a time limit. 1 year, or at most 2. That should be enough time to get to know each other. If love does not bloom between us by then, we should end it. You said yourself that a loveless marriage is not worth sustaining." Cedric nodded. "I suppose you are right." Dylan added eagerly, "If you happen to fall for someone else, please feel free to start a relationship. When that happens, you may end our marriage immediately." Dylan's strange confidence surprised and intrigued Cedric. Ultimately, he nodded, humoring her wishes. As dusk fell and they neared home, Dylan spoke up hesitantly. "My lord, may I ask one more favor of you? At the end of the wedding, the bride and groom usually kiss, but I have absolutely no experience with such things." Cedric smirked teasingly. "You wish to save your first kiss for the one you truly love? Correct." Blushing at being read so easily, Dylan stammered, "That is a bit blunt, but yes. So I was wondering, could you kiss my cheek instead of my lips? I do not mind, but would it not look odd for newlyweds to only kiss on the cheek at the altar?" Hearing this, Dylan's eyes lit up, and she pointed out a bold proposal. "Then why do we not practice right now?" Cedric froze, unable to believe his ears. Before he could recover, Dylan eagerly demonstrated. "I mean, kiss right next to my lips like this, so it looks like a real kiss to others. Right here." Cedric sighed, humoring her antics. "I am ready. Go ahead." Up close, Cedric gazed at her face. It was the first time he had looked at her this closely with her eyes closed. Her long eyelashes cast shadows and a few tiny freckles dusted the bridge of her nose. Noticing a small speck near her eye, he instinctively reached out and poked it. Dylan startled and cried out, "Oh heavens, you startled me." "That is just a freckle. They say it only shows clearly when I close my eyes." "All right, let us try again." Hearing that, Cedric gently lifted her chin with his gloved hand. Dylan obediently closed her eyes. Cedric slowly leaned in, gently placing a soft, lingering kiss on her cheek beneath the glowing sunset. Yet the moment she opened her eyes, Dylan rubbed her cheek and cheered, "Wow, I really felt absolutely nothing." What a relief. I thought my heart might flutter a bit, but there was nothing at all. My resolve truly is unshakable. Staring at her infuriatingly casual attitude, Cedric grit his teeth, wondering if he should just kiss her lips to show her what a flutter really felt like. Dylan remained blissfully unaware of her fiancé's frustration. The two walked side by side along the twilight path. Dylan spoke candidly. "To be honest, I do not think I am qualified to be your wife. I have never studied high society etiquette, nor do I know how to manage a great house. I might bring you far more trouble than benefit." Cedric replied nonchalantly, "I have never expected my partner to do me harm." Dylan laughed, suddenly lifting her skirt and clasping her hands to make a solemn vow. "I, Dylan Bailey Langton, in the name of 13 generations of the Langton family, vow that I will never engage in any unlawful act that harms the honor of the Duke of Southwark and his house." Cedric chuckled at her elaborate vow. He raised his own hand, his tone turning serious. "Then I, too, shall vow. I, Cedric Rawdon Hayworth, swear upon the ducal crest that I shall demand nothing of Dylan Langton." He smiled, offering his hand. "We are about to become husband and wife. Stop calling me my lord. It sounds so distant. Just call me Cedric." Dylan smiled brightly and curtsied with elegant grace. "Very well, Cedric. Though I may fall short, please treat me well during our time together, and I hope you will do the same for me, Dylan." Who could have foreseen that a forced relationship would progress so sweetly and naturally? Yet, just as happiness began to bloom in a distant castle by a crackling hearth, a breathtakingly beautiful blonde woman held an engagement invitation. "My, Cedric is getting married? How intriguing. Perhaps I should pay him a visit." The wedding day finally arrived. By tradition, a bride must wear 4 things: something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. The pearl necklace was a new gift from Cedric. The vintage gown was her grandmother's heirloom. The pearl hairpin was borrowed from her close friend. And finally, her bridal bouquet bloomed in vibrant shades of blue. Arm in arm with her father, Dylan walked down the aisle to the solemn strains of the wedding march. Yet beneath the glamorous facade, both the bride and groom were on the verge of utter exhaustion. With the wedding rushed in just 2 weeks, they had worked day and night, leaving them sleep-deprived and barely able to stand. As the officiant read the vows, Dylan's eyes grew heavy, her head nodding off. Cedric glanced over and whispered, Don't fall asleep on me. I'm just resting my eyes, she murmured back.
Despite their overwhelming fatigue, the ceremony proceeded without a hitch. Once they both said, "I do," the officiant smilingly declared them husband and wife, gesturing for the groom to kiss his bride. Dylan shot Cedric a warning glare, reminding him to stick strictly to the script. With a smirk, Cedric executed their rehearsed move perfectly, placing a precise kiss on her cheek near the corner of her lips. Thundering applause and blessings echoed throughout the chapel. Leaving the chapel for the outdoor reception, the newlywed couple whispered playful teases to each other. "You look like you've had a rough time. Were you worried I wouldn't show up?" "Not at all. In fact, I was hoping you'd run away." "Well, then I'm terribly sorry to disappoint you, my dear wife. We agreed to use our name Cedric." "Very well, Dylan. How does it feel to be married?" "It is an exhausting experience I never wish to repeat. But alas, we still have to greet the guests waiting outside." Glancing at Cedric's guests, Dylan realized there were only 4 people representing the groom's side. Cedric then led her over to her own family. At the sight of her sister, Emily rushed over with teary eyes to offer her congratulations. But in the next second, Emily suddenly squeezed his hand and tearfully threatened the groom. "Cedric, please take good care of my sister. If you hurt her, it will be the death of me." "I mean it. I'll write a 17-page record of the suffering you caused, then drink poison to die a tragic death. That means you will have killed 2 people at once. Do you understand?" Cedric replied solemnly, "Do not worry. That will never happen." Dylan leaned in to whisper that her sister had simply been reading too many sensational romance novels lately. Before they could catch their breath, her brother Haley staggered over, his eyes red with tears. He sobbed, "Do you have any idea that Dylan and I shared a womb from the moment of conception? I was born first, so I've only been apart from her for a mere 20 minutes. Nobody has been by her side longer than me." Dumbfounded, Dylan retorted, "Wait, we were apart for 6 years when you went to boarding school." Haley ignored his sister's words, continuing his dramatic wailing. "We share the same birthday, the same womb. Oh, the agony. What is wrong with you? Are you drunk?" Watching his wife's chaotic and dramatic family, Cedric didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was surely the most theatrical family he had ever met. Meanwhile, Dylan delivered a swift, painful kick to her brother. "You're such an idiot." Clutching his back in pain, Haley still tried to put on a tough facade in front of the groom. "No matter what, if you make Dylan suffer, I will challenge you to a duel. Even if it costs me my life, I'll take yours." Cedric smiled calmly. "I will ensure that never happens." Dylan scoffed. "Stop bluffing. Your marksmanship is terrible. I'd even let you shoot first, puppy." "I told you not to call me that anymore." "Why? Do you dislike the nickname Mother gave you?" Noticing Haley's tearing eyes, Dylan teased, "Are you actually crying?" Watching her crybaby brother turn away to wipe his tears, Dylan smiled softly. "Thank you, you big softy." As they greeted the groom's guests, Cedric coldly brushed past a beautiful blonde woman and another lady, urging Dylan to move on. His sudden coldness left Dylan wondering if his relationship with that blonde woman was strained. When it was time for the bouquet toss, the host excitedly called for all unmarried ladies to step forward. Dylan looked out and was left speechless, for there were only 2 single ladies present, Emily and the blonde woman. Dylan tossed the vibrant bouquet into the air. "Catch!" Emily eagerly reached for her sister's bouquet, but the blonde woman suddenly leaped forward and snatched it with swift precision. Clutching the flowers, the blonde woman said flatly, "My apologies. It was merely a reflex." Emily watched despondently, disappointed that she couldn't keep her sister's keepsake. With the wedding reception over, it was time for the newlyweds to depart from the Langton estate. Foregoing a romantic honeymoon, Dylan flatly declined the Duke's offer, opting to head straight to the Brighton estate near the capital. Before departing, Dylan and Emily shared a tearful embrace, reluctant to let go. Sniffling, Emily urged, "You must write to me often. Once you're settled, I will come visit you right away. I promise. Come see me whenever you miss me." The carriage rolled away, leaving the estate behind. Looking out the window, Dylan quietly watched her home fade into the distance. Sitting across from her, Cedric softly asked, "Are you all right?" "Of course, there are just so many emotions catching up with me. Would you like a handkerchief?" "Thank you, but I don't cry that easily. I'm just feeling a little homesick." Suddenly, Dylan let out a massive yawn, squeezing a single tear from her eye. Cedric smirked teasingly. "I still have this handkerchief if you'd like to use it." Blushing deeply, Dylan wiped her eye and snapped, "Listen, those are yawn tears, not crying tears." Cedric chuckled softly. The carriage carrying the newlyweds rolled peacefully down the road, painted in warm twilight hues. Inside the carriage, Dylan let out another loud yawn. Cedric looked at her. "That's the second time already. Are you that exhausted?"
Yes, I am. You have no idea how many decisions I had to make these past 2 weeks. But mostly, I couldn't get a single wink of sleep last night. Was it because you were nervous? No, I had to stay up all night reading fairy tales to calm Emily's crying. I've done that ever since we were little whenever she was upset. Now she falls asleep like a baby just by hearing my voice. Cedric smiled gently. You are truly a wonderful sister. Seeing Dylan nod off, Cedric suggested she take a nap. She tried to stay awake to keep him company, but seeing him pull out a thick stack of documents, she finally closed her eyes. Soon, soft, rhythmic snores filled the carriage. Cedric smiled, watching his new wife sleep so soundly. He gently draped his coat over her, carefully adjusting her head to rest comfortably. Seeing her look so peaceful, Cedric felt a strange sense of tranquility wash over him, and he soon fell asleep as well. Night had already fallen when the carriage finally stopped. Waking with a start, Cedric gently shook Dylan. Dylan, wake up. We've arrived. Neither the bumpy journey nor Cedric's calling could wake Dylan, who slept like a rock. Left with no choice, Cedric resorted to pinching her nose shut. Dylan frowned, groaned, exhaled sharply, and turned over to continue snoring. Cedric chuckled, admitting defeat. Fine, you win. At the Brighton estate, the entire household staff stood in neat lines outside to welcome their new mistress. Everyone was eager to see the master and his new lady step down elegantly from the carriage hand in hand. The carriage door opened. But instead of a grand entrance, Cedric carried Dylan out in his arms, princess style. The new bride remained fast asleep in his arms. Cedric gestured to the servants. Quietly now. The astonished servants quickly bowed, not daring to make a single sound. Cedric carried Dylan straight to the master bedroom, gently laying her down on the soft bed. He leaned down, gazing quietly at her sleeping face. Her long eyelashes and the dusting of freckles on her nose and cheeks made her look incredibly endearing. Unconsciously, Cedric reached out to touch her cheek. Just then, a noise from the door made him freeze instantly. The maid, standing outside, panicked, bowing quickly in apology. Flustered, Cedric replied, It's all right. She's exhausted. Let her rest. Peony. Surprised that the Duke remembered her name, Peony blushed. Yes, Your Grace? Please help her change and remove her hair accessories so she can sleep comfortably. Drifting in a peaceful sleep, Dylan had a strange dream of a busy little bee flying alongside her carriage. As the bright morning sun filtered through the window, she slowly opened her eyes to an unfamiliar room. And so, Dylan's exciting journey at the Brighton estate officially began. Waking up in the luxurious bedroom, it took her a few moments to remember that she was now married. Looking around the grand room, she recalled her conversation in the carriage with Cedric. When she had asked about the Brighton estate, he had casually described it as rather modest. Dylan grit her teeth. And he called this modest? It's as massive and magnificent as a palace. But she shook off her thoughts. Though this luxury was meant for Apolline, since she had changed the plot to save lives, she might as well enjoy it. Just then, the maid Peony entered and bowed. Dylan's warm and polite nature touched the young maid, making her blush with gratitude. When Peony asked about her bath, Dylan was astonished to learn that they had running hot water, an unimaginable luxury back at the Langton estate. Dylan tried to maintain her poise as a marchioness, telling herself not to act like a country bumpkin. But the moment she sank into the wisteria-scented porcelain tub, while the maids massaged her scalp and limbs, she completely melted in bliss. Oh, this must be heaven. My entire body feels like it's melting. As Dylan basked in luxury, a maid brought her a letter from Cedric. It read, To my dearest wife, please forgive me for leaving a letter instead of speaking to you in person. This inconvenience is entirely due to my useless friend, Ethan Rager, so please feel free to place all the blame on him. Dylan chuckled as she read on. In the novel, Ethan Raker was the best friend who played matchmaker for Cedric and the heroine. Surely a good soul. I imagine you might be anxious about how to act like a marchioness, Cedric continued. But fret not, as the servants are eager to assist you. Please make use of them as much as you like. I must travel to a win on business today, so communication will be limited. I do hope you will grow to love the Brighton estate. Folding the letter, Dylan smiled warmly. She resolved to fully indulge in this luxury for as long as she remained Cedric's wife. Meanwhile, in a distant castle, Cedric's mother furiously crumpled the newspaper in her hand, screaming in rage. That ungrateful Cedric! How dare he get married without saying a single word to his mother? And to a daughter of the Langton family of all people? A Langton? Her eyes burned with fury. I can't take this anymore. I won't rest until I go there and give him a piece of my mind. At the Brighton estate, Dylan took her first steps in managing the household. She politely introduced herself to the two veteran staff members, butler Thomas Holden and housekeeper Veronica Thompson. Noticing the professionalism and elegance in their every word, Dylan knew she had to work harder to become a worthy mistress. Meanwhile, in his office, Cedric was buried in paperwork regarding an opium smuggling case alongside his best friend and business partner, Ethan Raker. Ethan excitedly brought out a bottle of fine whiskey to celebrate, but Cedric flatly refused, needing to focus on his work. Rebuffed, Ethan slammed the bottle onto the desk in frustration and yelled, "Hey, Cedric! This is consolation whiskey for you, because your marriage is about to be annulled. When that happens, I'll personally testify on your wife's behalf." "What on earth are you talking about? Do you even have a conscience? How could you abandon your bride on your very first day of marriage? She left her hometown to marry you, yet you returned home for barely half an hour before leaving again. I bet she cries herself to sleep every night from loneliness." Cedric sighed, recalling the previous week when he stopped by the estate to pick up some things. He remembered Dillion yawning in the hallway, casually asking to arrange some flowers before happily going back to sleep. Cedric thought to himself, she is definitely not crying from loneliness. On the contrary, she lives very comfortably and gets along well with the servants. Ethan refused to back down, continuously scolding Cedric for being a workaholic. Watching his best friend overreact, Cedric couldn't hide his mocking smile. "Look at yourself. Aren't you the one who put me in this situation in the first place? If you hadn't gotten into a fight at the police station, I wouldn't have had to leave home right after my wedding. Hey, that guy picked a fight with me first. If my marriage gets annulled, I will hold you completely responsible." Ethan, caught between laughing and crying, hastily apologized. He grew curious about the new wife who could change someone as cold as Cedric. Ethan excitedly demanded to meet the new mistress. But before Ethan could finish, the office door was suddenly kicked open. An elegantly dressed aristocratic woman stormed in and slammed her hand onto Cedric's desk. "Cedric Hayworth, how dare you do this to your own mother?" Ethan panicked and tried to intervene, only to get smacked in the face with her umbrella. "Get out of the way! How dare you get married without saying a single word to me?" Cedric calmly looked at his mother, who was practically fuming with rage. "Did the rumors of my wedding spread that quickly? And here I thought the press hadn't reported it yet. I hear everything eventually. Who do you think I am? I never expected you to betray me like this, you ungrateful child." With that, his mother swung her umbrella, aiming a heavy blow straight at him. Fortunately, his best friend, Ethan Raker, leaped in just in time to block the umbrella, saving him from a clear strike. Shielding himself with both hands, Ethan showered the furious lady with flattery. "Oh, milady, please calm down. You look so incredibly gorgeous and charming today. I simply couldn't stand by and watch." The lady's anger immediately subsided. She spoke proudly. "Of course. When am I ever not beautiful?" "Exactly. No one has ever looked as elegant as you do in purple." Purple indeed suits me well." But just seconds later, she suddenly remembered her main purpose. She whipped back around. "Don't try to distract me. Cedric, explain yourself this instant." Cedric calmly replied, "I did send you an invitation, mother. I didn't receive a single one. I sent 3 of them. 1 to Capital Estate and 2 to Vacation Villas. But I was informed you were on the St. Helena cruise." At the mention of the trip, she excitedly bragged about winning 7 consecutive rounds at the casino. Cedric smiled and congratulated her, but when she snapped out of it, she flew into a rage again. "But you didn't have to marry in such a rush. You could have postponed it until you received a response from me. It's that old man again, isn't it? How much longer does that damn old man intend to use you as a puppet?" Cedric firmly asserted, "I have never been anyone's puppet." Seeing her son married to a Langton girl, she grumbled, bringing up the old feud between the Duke's family and the Langton family. But immediately, Cedric lowered his voice. "My wife is a very good person. She is a wonderful woman. It is a pity you haven't had the chance to meet her yet." Cedric's resolute defense of his wife left the lady stunned. Seeing her son politely back down and apologize made her shiver. She hastily turned on her heel with her umbrella, not forgetting to scold him. "Work less, you workaholic." Watching his mother sweep through like a storm and vanish, Ethan gasped in admiration. Cedric gave his best friend a threatening look, then explained why he was burying himself in work. Since Dillion wanted time to prepare herself before her social debut, he had to quickly clear his desks so he could return to the Brighton estate to be with her tonight. However, what Cedric didn't expect was that his mother hadn't gone home. Instead, her carriage was speeding toward the Brighton estate to ambush her new daughter-in-law. Meanwhile, at the peaceful Brighton estate, Dillion had absolutely no idea what was awaiting her. She was happily sitting at her desk, carefully writing a letter to her sister Emily, bragging about the massive library and the incredibly attentive servants. After writing for a while, her pen ran out of ink. Dillion stretched and sighed, telling herself she'd have to stay up all night to write to her father and brother. Just then, her maid Peony rushed into the room in a panic to report that Madame Yvette, Cedric's mother, had arrived at the Brighton estate. Dillion gasped in shock. In her past lives novel, Cedric's mother was a classic villainess, famous for throwing a bag of money at the heroine's face and saying, "Take this money and get out of my son's life." Dillion told herself to stay strong and headed down to the foyer to greet her guest. Yet, the moment she saw her mother-in-law, Dillion was completely spellbound by her elegant and mature beauty. She thought to herself that Cedric's striking good looks were purely inherited from this beautiful mother. The two of them spoke at the exact same time. "Don't you dare dream of calling me mother-in-law."
"It is an honor to meet you, Madame Yvette." Flustered, Dillion apologized. "Forgive me for speaking first. May I address you as Madame Yvette?" Seeing that the young woman didn't call her mother-in-law as expected, Madame Yvette was instantly flustered. "Suit yourself." Realizing her preemptive strike had failed, she changed tactics, raising her chin to criticize Dillion's appearance.
"I thought that old man chose some spectacular woman for Cedric. Turns out you are nothing special, especially in terms of looks."
Dillion nodded calmly, honestly admitting, "You're quite right, madam. As you can see, I am by no means a beauty." Yet Dillion's self-deprecation unexpectedly triggered the lady's contrary nature. Seeing the young woman look so down on herself, Madame Yvette's face flushed. Clenching her fists, she shouted in annoyance, "What on earth are you talking about? Your face is quite lovely. It is extremely adorable. There is absolutely nothing wrong with your looks." This sudden dramatic turnaround left Dillion staring in wide-eyed shock. Even her own parents had never praised her like that, yet this villainous mother-in-law was screaming compliments about her being adorable. Blushing in confusion, Dillion murmured, "Thank you, madam." "I didn't say that to make you thank me. I am not some shallow person who judges others solely by their appearance. Who do you think I am?" "No, of course not. I didn't mean that at all. I just didn't expect such an elegant lady like you to pay any attention to someone ordinary like me." Hearing her daughter-in-law praise her, Madame Yvette shyly turned her head away, grumbling in defense. Granted, you aren't some breathtaking beauty of the ballrooms. However, I must admit you are quite pleasant to look at. And I am sure Cedric thought the same when he decided to marry you." Seeing her mother-in-law's shy but warm expression, Dillion couldn't help but feel touched. But in her heart, she silently corrected her. Unfortunately, her son didn't share that opinion about her looks at all. Madame Yvette quickly corrected her earlier criticism. She explained that she wasn't criticizing Dillion's facial features, but rather offering advice on her overly simple style and makeup. Drawing on her experience as a high society beauty, Madame Yvette pointed out every little trick, from using berry juice to accentuate her lashes, to shaping her eyebrows, and even criticized Dillion's plain bun. "This hairstyle is far too boring. With your jawline, letting your hair frame your ears is the current trend in the capital. Do your maids know absolutely nothing about modern fashion?" Hearing her mother-in-law blame the servants, Dillion immediately took the blame to protect them. "Please do not blame them. I was the one who asked them for a casual, comfortable style. I apologize for my lack of knowledge regarding fashion trends." Madame Yvette blurted out, "Indeed, you look just like a country bumpkin." But the moment the word country bumpkin left her mouth, Madame Yvette suddenly froze. The word brought back bitter memories of her own past when she first entered the capital as a commoner actress and was mocked by noble ladies using those exact words. The lady suddenly felt deep regret for repeating those harsh, insulting words to this young girl. Seeing Dillion so gentle and polite, so different from the snobbish noble ladies she imagined, Madame Yvette's heart was completely won over by her new daughter-in-law's charm. She awkwardly tried to backpedal. "Well, on second thought, your outfit isn't actually that bad." Dillion smiled brightly and sincerely thanked her mother-in-law for the advice. Her pure, sun-like smile made Madame Yvette's heart skip a beat. Despite trying to maintain a cold exterior, she eventually agreed to have tea in the drawing room. Taking a sip of linden tea, Madame Yvette asked curiously about its soothing effects. Dillion blushed and explained shyly, "Actually, this tea is to help calm my own nerves. I am quite poor at hosting guests, let alone receiving such a breathtakingly beautiful lady like yourself." The sincere compliment completely melted Madame Yvette's heart. She was secretly thrilled, holding back a triumphant smile. But when Dillion hesitantly apologized for speaking out of turn to an elder, the lady became annoyed. "An elder? Why apologize right after calling me beautiful?" "It is only because you look incredibly youthful that I misspoke, madam." Pleased by this, the lady brought up a topic. "But your mother and I are around the same age, aren't we?" Dillion nodded. "If my mother were still alive, she would be around your age now." Seeing Dillion's mood dampen, Madame Yvette panicked. She realized she had carelessly brought up the passing of the girl's mother. In her clumsy attempt to smooth things over, she only grew more awkward, ending up scowling in frustration at herself. Trying to regain her composure, she hesitantly shared her own story. "My own mother also passed away when I was only 4 years old. And Cedric's father, Alexander, passed away when Cedric was just 6. I was devastated too, but in the end, I got through it."
What I mean is, we are resilient enough to survive any hardship. It is the adversity of the past that shapes who we are today. You have become a wonderful woman because of those experiences, Dillion. Madame Yvette's heartfelt words touched Dillion's heart deeply. Thank you so much, Madame Yvette. You feel like the older sister I never had. The lady blushed deeply, her heart fluttering. Seeing her daughter-in-law flusteredly apologize for calling her sister, Madame Yvette knew she had lost to Dillion's sheer charm. Late that night at the Brighton estate, Dillion sat at her desk after seeing her mother-in-law off. She felt incredibly fortunate to have met only kind people since arriving in the capital, but as she went to continue her letter to her family, she realized her inkwell had run completely dry. Unwilling to wake Peony, who was already asleep, Dillion remembered there was ink in the library and decided to retrieve it herself. At that very moment, Cedric was just returning home late from work. As soon as he stepped through the door, Butler Holden greeted him. Cedric inquired about the house, asking if anything unusual had happened today. Sir, Madame Yvette paid a visit. Cedric tensed up, fearing his mother had come to cause a scene. But the butler's next words left him utterly bewildered. They had a wonderful and amicable chat over afternoon tea. Madame Yvette even left with a bright, warm smile. The new lady is truly a wonderful mistress of the house. Cedric could hardly believe his ears. He walked upstairs and paused outside Dillion's room. He hesitated to knock, but fearing he would wake her, he turned toward the library to finish his remaining work. Stepping into the dark library, Cedric lit an oil lamp. But as he sat down, he was surprised to find the inkwell on the desk had vanished. At that moment, a delicate fragrance mingled with the scent of sandalwood drifted past him. Before he could react, a figure suddenly emerged from the dark and crashed into him, sending him tumbling to the floor. Cedric grimaced in pain and quickly looked up. Under the faint moonlight, Dillion stood in a thin nightgown, looking bewildered by the window curtains. Staring at the girl in front of him, Cedric breathed her name in astonishment. Dillion. Seeing her tremble, Cedric worried that the impact had injured her. To his surprise, Dillion wasn't hurt at all. She simply burst into fits of laughter. Sorry, it's not that funny, but I didn't expect you to get so startled that you fell backward like that. Your bewildered expression was just too hilarious, haha. Finding himself the object of her amusement, Cedric gritted his teeth. He grabbed a nearby curtain, wrapped her in it, and spun her around like a spinning top. Dizzy and breathless, Dillion cried out in surrender. Good heavens, Cedric! What on earth are you doing? I only laughed at you a little bit. I'm sorry, I yield. Cedric calmly unwrapped her, his voice cool. I thought an intruder had broken in, so why were you hiding behind the curtain? I didn't want to be seen as intruding on someone else's private space, so I hid out of reflex. The phrase, someone else's private space, immediately pricked Cedric's pride. Seeing her constantly draw lines between them, he frowned. Why do you keep calling the library someone else's private space? This is hardly my bedroom. Whether by law or in the eyes of society, you have every right to use this library just as I do. Hearing his reassuring declaration, Dillion smiled brightly. She began to passionately share her love for books. Though no bookworm, she was captivated by the scent of old paper and the sight of colorful book spines neatly arranged. Watching her innocent, vibrant smile under the warm glow of the lamp, Cedric found himself entranced. A strange, gentle warmth welled up in his chest. Smiling softly, he gently told her she was free to read whatever she pleased. Dillion beamed and thanked him, then suddenly remembered something. Ah, that's right. Madame Yvette visited today. Cedric tensed, suddenly remembering his formidable mother. He asked tentatively, already imagining his mother terrorizing his new bride. Did it go well? My mother didn't give you a hard time, did she? Yet, contrary to Cedric's fears, Dillion clasped her hands, her eyes sparkling like starlight. Of course it went wonderfully. I'm so glad Madame Yvette is such a kind-hearted soul. She's both incredibly beautiful and exceptionally kind. Cedric stood frozen, a giant question mark forming in his mind. Did she just call my mother kind? In his memory, his mother, Madame Yvette, was a former stage star renowned for her pride, intensity, and fiery temper. No one had ever used the word kind to describe her. He couldn't fathom what miracle had transpired between them this afternoon. Seeing the genuine admiration in Dillion's eyes, Cedric knew she wasn't lying. A relieved smile touched his lips, and he knew he had made the right choice in marrying her. Dillion eagerly clasped her hands, expressing her wish to learn high society etiquette from Cedric. Madame Yvette praised you as a highly refined gentleman who knows his etiquette. It would be wonderful to practice dining and conversing with you before my debut. That's simple enough. Oh, and I also want to practice dancing with you. At the mention of dancing, Cedric recalled his bruised toes from the ball, wondering if it was too late to back out. But Dillion quickly added, Madame Yvette said I need a male partner, but since you're always busy, I suppose we must ask someone else. The phrase, someone else, instantly struck a nerve in the Marquis. He interrupted immediately, declaring firmly, "Who says I'm busy? I've wrapped up all my work. I have plenty of free time."
Having finalized their schedule, Dillion cheerfully waved goodbye to return to her room. But after only a few steps, Cedric suddenly called out to her. "Oh, is something wrong?" Cedric bent down, picking up a pink cotton slipper from the floor and holding it out. Dillion flushed red with embarrassment. Accustomed to going barefoot back home, she had forgotten to wear her slippers in her haste. She scrambled forward to grab them. "Give them to me. I can put them on myself." But Cedric gently held them out of reach. "The floor is cold. Stay still." Before Dillion could react, the noble Marquis knelt on one knee, gently lifting her slender foot to slip it on. His gentle, meticulous care made Dillion's cheeks burn with embarrassment. "You are awfully practiced at this. This is actually the first time I've ever put shoes on a woman." "You must be joking." Cedric smiled at her. "I'm telling the truth. But that is quite all right, as this will likely become a regular occurrence in our future." Dillion's heart hammered wildly, as if it might leap right out of her chest. Panicked, she scrambled to her feet and hurried toward the door to escape this dangerous tenderness. Yet just as she reached the threshold, Dillion hesitated. She looked back with a shy, tentative smile. "Good night, Cedric." Cedric stared at her smile, completely captivated, and softly replied, "Good night, Dillion." Since Dillion's arrival, the quiet Brighton estate has suddenly brightened, filled with laughter. He realized that the one who had changed the most since their marriage was actually himself. Over the following days, the Brighton estate transformed into a strict training camp under Madame Yvette's command. The strict mother-in-law rigorously quizzed Dillion on every noble family in high society. Correct answers earned Dillion a fine cup of rose Earl Grey, while mistakes meant drinking a bitter tea laced with spicy chili. Supported by her loyal maids, Peony and Rebecca, Dillion effortlessly mastered the lineages and even Duke Maynard's biography. While Dillion was enjoying a pastry, Madame Yvette smiled and announced, "Once you finish your tea, we shall begin dancing lessons in the ballroom." Dillion choked on her tea, screaming internally, "Can't I enjoy this piece for just a moment longer?" However, the dance lessons quickly proved to be a true nightmare. Madame Yvette was relentless, calling out corrections without pause. "Again, this is a 4/4 beat. You are spinning too quickly. Again. What is wrong with your right arm? It is swinging like a broken puppet's. Again. Exhausted, Dillion collapsed onto the sofa. Madame Yvette shook her head, forced to admit that Dillion was an absolute disaster at dancing. Even so, seeing her discouraged, she offered gentle comfort. "All right, do not lose heart. You picked up the waltz and gallop steps remarkably fast. But with the mazurka, why do you struggle so much?" Dillion blushed, thinking back to her useless ex-fiancé, Miles. "Well, I had very little opportunity to dance the mazurka back home, and my usual partner back then was rather terrible at it." "Ah, so you learned poor form right from the start. In that case, you need rigorous practice with a proper partner. It would be ideal to find someone with a height and build similar to Cedric." Dillion blinked. "Madame Yvette, is there any reason I cannot simply practice with Cedric himself?" "What? With Cedric?" "Yes, he told me himself that he has plenty of free time lately." Madame Yvette was utterly taken aback. A workaholic like Cedric, who invented tasks even when finished, claiming he had free time. A cunning smile played on her lips as she immediately understood his game. "Oh, if Cedric said so, then it must be true. You two really should spend more quality time together. How about we call it a day early? I wouldn't want you to be too exhausted before Cedric returns home." Dillion naively agreed, completely oblivious to the deeper meaning behind her words. That evening, Cedric returned home early from work. Informed by the butler that Dillion was waiting in the ballroom, he made his way upstairs. Opening the doors, the sound of soft, clear humming echoed throughout the vast space. Dillion was swaying alone to the music, spinning with remarkable grace and elegance. Cedric leaned against the doorway, watching her in silence. As she completed her turn, he applauded softly. Dillion gasped, turning around. "My goodness, you startled me." "You should really say something when you walk in." Cedric stepped closer. "My apologies. But your sheer grace was so captivating, I could only stand and watch." The Lord's sudden compliment left Dillion blushing and entirely speechless. Despite her burning cheeks, Dillion pulled Cedric to the center of the ballroom to begin. She explained they couldn't hire musicians because Madame Yvette feared rumors of her poor dancing would spread, so they used a music box. As the strains of the mazurka filled the room, the two began moving in perfect rhythm. As the dance concluded, Dillion looked up proudly. "Well, do you see any improvement?" "Of course, you have improved tremendously." Dillion was thrilled. Throughout the entire dance, she had not stepped on his feet even once. Yet, Cedric casually remarked, "Your mistake is that you did not step on my feet." Dillion hastily took 3 steps back, looking at him with suspicion. My lord, are you perhaps the sort who enjoys having your feet trodden on by your partner?
Of course not. I only meant that you were far too focused on avoiding my feet to actually enjoy the dance. Your body is as stiff as a board.
You dance so naturally when you are alone. Why tense up so much just to avoid another steps?
But if I am not careful, I will surely crush your feet. It does not matter. You are entirely welcome to step on them. Go ahead and try it now. Step as hard as you can.
Provoked by Cedric's confidence, Dillion did not hesitate to bring her sharp heel down with all her might. Yet, instead of a cry of pain, she met a surface as hard as stone. With a triumphant smirk, Cedric revealed, "I put metal plates inside my shoes." Fuming with rage, Dillion felt her pride deeply wounded. What an insult. You have absolutely no faith in my dancing. Cedric offered a warm, reassuring smile.
I only wanted you to see that mistakes are fine, so please just relax.
His gentle words of encouragement breathed new life into Dillion's spirit. Stealing her resolve, she became determined to dance beautifully. Swept away by the music, they moved in perfect, effortless harmony. As the music faded, Cedric praised her, "Exquisite. You truly surprised me." Dillion cheered in delight, not forgetting to compliment Cedric on his superb leading. Cedric replied casually, "Well, I have had a rather frequent dance partner lately." Catching his drift, Dillion flashed a sly, teasing smile. "Oh, is that so?" Seeing this, Cedric hurriedly corrected her. "I meant my mother."
I did not say a word. But if you say so, it must be true.
Seeing Dillion tease him so lightheartedly about his past, Cedric's fist clenched instinctively. The playful air dissolved as he looked at her with gravity. "Dillion, does it bother you?"
Knowing that you will likely have to face Katarina in the future.
Katarina Rosum was Cedric's former lover, a sophisticated and renowned socialite among the high nobility. He feared she would mock or look down upon a country-born lady like Dillion. Yet, Dillion answered with ease. "Not at all. It does not trouble me in the slightest." "You are lying because you do not want to make things awkward between us, are you not?" "I swear that is not the case. I truly do not care about your past relationships." Her indifference left Cedric utterly bewildered. He had no idea that she only remained unbothered because Katarina was never mentioned in the novel. What truly weighed on Dillion's mind was the inevitable day Apolline would appear. Yet, Cedric mistook her detachment for a lingering affection for her former fiancé, Miles. Why would I rather have her be jealous of Katarina than pine for that other man? To break the awkward silence, Dillion playfully spoke up. "You know so many of my weaknesses, while I know none of yours. So, pray tell, what is your weakness? Are you afraid of ghosts?" I do not believe in ghosts." "What about insects, then?" "If I find any, I simply catch them and release them outside." Dillion pouted with a small huff. "You are no fun at all. Do tell me at least one." "I am not foolish enough to hand you a weapon to use against me." Dillion smirked. "Is that so? Madame Yvette told me that when you were 6, you kept pronouncing mille-feuille as mille-filet." Their shared laughter drew them closer together. The following day, Dillion agreed to go shopping with Madame Yvette at the Elrod department store. After 6 hours of being dragged through boutiques and sweet shops, Dillion was on the verge of collapse. Seeing her daughter-in-law's exhaustion, Madame Yvette inquired, "You look rather tired, Dillion. Your stamina seems somewhat lacking." Dillion bristled at the comment. How could she, a lady who used to ride and hunt in the wild forests, be called weak? She proudly boasted of learning swordsmanship and marksmanship alongside her twin brother. Madame Yvette muttered under her breath, "Then why is your dancing so atrocious?" Crying inwardly, Dillion retorted, "I heard that, Madame Yvette." Clearing her throat, the lady asked, "Has Cedric been of any help to you?" "Yes, he has. He gave me quite a bit of helpful advice." The carriage came to a halt before a luxurious salon. Yet, the moment they stepped down, Madame Yvette's smile vanished. Her eyes narrowed, radiating a sudden, icy hostility. How dreadfully unfortunate. "Look who we have here." Dillion glanced over in curiosity. Her gaze met that of an elegant but intensely critical woman. Warning bells rang in Dillion's mind. This was Sabrina Hayworth. Sabrina Hayworth was the wife of Cedric's uncle. In the novel, this pair were the primary villains, plotting to usurp the Duke's title and fortune. By high society protocol, the one of lower rank had to offer greetings first. Though only the second son's wife, Sabrina condescendingly greeted Yvette as Madame Diamond, her old stage name, used by tabloids to demean her. Undeterred, Madame Yvette held her head high. "Good morning, Lady Sabrina," she thought to herself. "My son is the heir to the dukedom. Who do you think you are?" Sabrina turned her gaze to Dillion. "Oh, and who might this be?" "Ah, the new lady everyone has been whispering about lately. Apologies for my absence at the wedding. My husband was simply too occupied." Unfazed by the mockery directed at her simple wedding, Dillion remained calm. Flashing a bright smile, she countered, "Please,
Do not trouble yourself, my lady. All the truly important guests were present to offer us their blessings. For that, I am deeply grateful." Incensed, Sabrina sneered at the hasty marriage, hinting that Dillion had wed in a rush due to pregnancy, just as Yvette once had. A spark of fury ignited within Madame Yvette. To defend her daughter-in-law, she immediately drew upon her natural talents as a former star actress. With tears welling in her eyes, she spoke of a fateful love at first sight. Sensing the cue, Dillion promptly channeled all her knowledge from romantic novels. Placing her hands on her cheeks, she feigned bashfulness. "It is rather embarrassing. When I first met Cedric on my way to the estate, one look into his eyes and I knew he was the one. Just 4 days later, he proposed in the most romantic fashion, right in the middle of a ballroom." Both Madame Yvette and Sabrina gasped at the revelation. Dillion pressed on with her performance. Indeed, mid-dance he went down on one knee and asked for my hand not once, but twice. The Duke was overjoyed, and I was so deeply moved that I wept as I gave my consent. Madame Yvette's eyes shone with delight. Heavens, my son did that? Oh, how I wish I had seen it. Their masterclass in acting left Sabrina utterly speechless. Just then, the young lady beside Sabrina stepped forward. What a sweet tale. I have known Cedric for ages, yet I never imagined him to be such a romantic. This young lady was Cecilia, Sabrina's own daughter. Sensing Cecilia's skepticism, Dillion embellished her fabricated tale further. Cupping her face, she whispered shyly, "To be honest, he confessed that he proposed because of first love." Hearing this, Sabrina sneered. She lost no time in insulting both Madame Yvette and Cedric. My, how hard to believe. But one must admit Cedric takes after his mother, that commoner actress. He changes lovers like clothes and never stays with anyone for long. To be constantly plagued by scandals, yet claim to have found true love? What a miracle. Seeing Sabrina continuously insult Cedric and his mother, a fire of anger awoke in Dillion's heart. Since it had come to this, she would show no mercy. Dillion smiled brilliantly. "You speak the truth, my lady. And it is precisely that side of Cedric which I find most captivating. For a nobleman to always be the center of attention, is that not a mark of distinction? Those tabloid rumors are merely the envious cries of the jealous. Someone as charming as him has every right to bear such a weight. I only count myself the luckiest woman in the land to have had him kneel before me." Seeing Sabrina's face darken, Dillion delivered the final blow. Indeed, premarital affairs are of little consequence. I am certain there are those who bring far greater shame upon their house through gambling, violence, and vice. Sabrina's face instantly flushed crimson with rage and embarrassment. Dillion calmly recounted the scandals of Morgan Hayworth, Sabrina's eldest son. He was a profligate rogue, twice expelled, drowning in gambling debts, and prone to violent brawls. In the novel, he even plotted to kidnap and assault Epeline during her pregnancy before being imprisoned. Such a disgraceful wretch truly dishonors his family. Would you not agree, my lady? Hoisted by her own petard, Sabrina trembled with utter humiliation. Suddenly, her daughter Cecilia let slip a soft chuckle. Feeling her mother's sharp gaze, Cecilia quickly disguised it as a cough. Unable to bear the shame, Sabrina swallowed her pride and offered a stiff invitation. "To make amends for today, may I invite you to a ball hosted by our family in 2 weeks, Dillion?" Seeing her mother-in-law's subtle nod, Dillion smiled politely. "I would be delighted. Thank you, my lady." Once they were gone, Madame Yvette joyfully embraced Dillion. "Dillion, you did marvelously. Simply splendid." Later, Madame Yvette poured out her long-held resentment toward the deceitful Sabrina. Dillion nodded in agreement, expressing her own disdain for those who insulted family. Hearing this, Madame Yvette paused, her heart skipping a beat. Finding an ally, she complained that Cedric always told her to endure his uncle's family, who did nothing but cause trouble. Since she was no longer part of the ducal house, she could not intervene, but it pained her to see her son mistreated. Seeing the mother's helplessness, Dillion spoke with firm resolve. "Madame Yvette, from now on, I shall be angry on your behalf. Should they dare cross us again, I will unleash my full wrath upon them. I have every right to do so as the wife of the future Duke." Madame Yvette's heart was utterly won over by her daughter-in-law's fierce defense. Inside the salon, she suddenly asked, "Dillion, you call the Duke grandfather, so why not call me mother? We are family after all." Blushing deeply, Dillion replied, "Then, from this day forth, I shall call you mother." Back in her chambers, Dillion peacefully enjoyed a delicious pastry prepared by the chef. Watching Peony and Rebecca care for her with such warmth, Dillion felt a bittersweet pang in her chest. She knew this luxury and genuine affection rightfully belonged to the heroine, Epeline. One day, once her duty was complete, she would have to pack her bags and leave Brighton Estate. As she pondered that future farewell, tears welled up in her eyes.
She scolded herself, warning that indulging in this warmth would only lead to heartbreak. Just as Dillion was sinking into these gloomy thoughts, a soft knock sounded at the door. The door slowly creaked open. Seeing the person who stepped inside, Dillion gasped and froze. It wasn't her maid, but Cedric himself, the noble Duke, personally carrying a warm tea tray into her room. That is the end of part 1. Please like and subscribe to catch the latest episodes. Love you all.